Word? How do we define trauma?
That's a really good question. Trauma is anything that is too big, too fast, too overwhelming for somebody's nervous system. So it's really more of a refined, complex answer because trauma isn't what people think it is. If we're talking about things that are just too difficult for someone's nervous system, that gets really individualized. So I'm going to start with people's nervous systems first. So all of us are born with our set temperament, with our given temperament, the way we're wired. Now, there's some research or a lot of research and talk about how that comes about, our specific temperament, but a genetic load does play into that.
Wow.
Our life in utero plays a role in that. What the parent was going through while the fetus is in utero, while the baby's in utero. And then when that baby's born, they have their set temperament.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And I guess you can alter, you can help manage it with the way you're born with that temperament.
Yeah.
Really says a lot about one's personality, I guess.
Yeah, there's like the classic temperaments where there are just like 3 types of temperaments. Then they kind of built on it. There are now like 7. I forgot the specific names. It doesn't come to mind. But basically what they're saying is there are those more cautious temperaments. There are the shyer temperaments. There are those that are louder. There are those that are more forthcoming. There are those that are calmer, and there are those that are fussier.
Just like you categorize it to 4?
Yeah, it's just like I don't have the specific names on hand. It's really interesting, actually. I can give you those, later on for people to take a look at.
Absolutely.
So that's one part. And then the next really important part is because the brain and the spine, the brain stem, which is like connecting you to the spine and the rest of your nervous system, is not developed yet. A lot of it is developed once you're born, but the rest is developed within your attachment and relationship and interactions with your primary caregivers.
Wow.
Really the mom.
Wow.
And then, of course, dad and grandma and grandpa and everyone else that comes along with it. But that's, again, why it's so important to make sure that the mothers are okay.
Wow.
Because they're directly impacting brain development. So it starts off with the temperament, but then that's where the nurture and nature thing comes in. The brain is actually developing in tandem with the interactions of the mothers, especially in the first 2 years.
Wow.
2 to 3 years, super duper important.
So what would you recommend? Let's say a mother has 3 kids. It's already a very stressful environment, 3 little children under 5 or 4, and now she's working, taking care of a household, and now she's expecting or is due very soon. How does one regulate and make sure that, I guess, you don't impact that child?
Yeah, I try to be really soft, realistic. One side of my brain knows the research. The other side of my brain knows what moms go through.
Right.
So I don't want to make it prescriptive.
Okay.
I kind of want to make it like something that we just know and can have in mind. But I don't want them panicking because that's going to cause even more stress.
Right. No
So the biggest thing that I try to bring in with moms is the concept of self-compassion. So wherever they could, whatever it is they're going through, to see if they can just take a few minutes and just go easy on themselves. Just whatever you do is just an investment. The more you can breathe, just some relaxing things to, like, put your feet up if you could for 5 minutes, but just to kind of be mindful about going easy on yourself and being relaxing, and just try to be mindful, but don't panic about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you see, I guess?
I think I want to actually just add a tiny
please.
drop more. Yeah.
Please, yeah.
Which is, so there's that the brain development that I'm talking about, which is, so it's like the temperament, their brain development in tandem with moms and dads also, and the rest of the family. And that's when human beings start to develop their attachment styles, the major attachment styles, which is secure, insecure, avoidant, disorganized.
Right.
Those, that's really when that develops. But also your cognitive mind develops in that within your interactions actually with the parents. So if I'm dealing with someone who has postpartum depression or is being really put into circumstances that are very stressful or whatever the case is, and they're not able to give that child the attunement that they need. They're not mirroring the child's feelings, and then the child doesn't get a sense of self.
Wow.
So their feelings are not reflected back to them, and very often that's where the seeds of shame are planted. Feelings of not feeling worthy can get planted on from really, really, really early on.
Wow.
So that's why, again, it's so important to take care of, for us to take care of mothers, not to kind of stress them out with it, but for us to really, build a community around them. They say it takes a village. It really means that. And then as they're getting older, in terms of trauma, there are two types of trauma, just to explain to people what that is. There's the small T traumas and the big T traumas. So the small T traumas are the developmental traumas that I'm talking about that start like from in utero, throughout childhood, growing up. Those are the small T's that happen over time. Then there are the big T traumas, which is like the war in Israel right now, bombs falling, natural disasters, things of that nature, losing a family member suddenly. Those are like big T traumas. And many times when we're looking at a person's nervous system, what might have been too big, too fast, too overwhelming for a person's nervous system, it might even look to our eyes when we say trauma, it's like, but they didn't have any trauma, like nothing terrible happened to them.
Right.
But maybe they weren't in a space where they were feeling attuned to. Because let's say mom doesn't have such a sensitive temperament, but the child does, and she's not really sure how to tune into this child. The child doesn't feel attuned to, their needs don't get met, their nervous system is not getting attuned to, and that in and of itself could already be considered a trauma.
Wow.
So it's such a difficult thing to, and there's no one to blame. It's just not always such a goodness of fit, and so it's really complex. So that's why people are always so confused. We're like, you're going to therapy and now they're suddenly telling you that you didn't have a great childhood. And we're like, no, that's not what we're doing. They're coming in so confused as to, why am I anxious? Why am I always full of shame? Why don't I have confidence? Things were okay.
Right.
And then when I peel back the layers, I'm like, I don't know if this person was attuned to in the way that they especially needed to be attuned to. And it's not fault finding, it's seeing how can we build in those interventions to help them out now, and how do I help them attune to themselves and to mirror themselves in the way that they need to be attuned to.
Wow.
So it goes very deep. And then another thing that I'll add, I'll ramble a little and then
please.
you'll ask questions.
Absolutely.
Is the things that look many times like ADD, ADHD. So again, I'm saying there's the temperament that we're born with, and then there's the interactions that we had, and there's the genetic load. So many times the genetic load won't get activated if they're born into a secure environment and the parents are able to be really attentive. But if not, and there is that genetic load, things can kind of spring up. Now, basically, it goes back to the attunement. There's someone that I love mentioning. Her name is Ruth Cohn. She's someone who talks a lot about childhood emotional neglect. I'm not even talking about abuse here. I'm just talking about emotional neglect.
Wow.
Where parents were just not able to tune into their child's feelings. And what she says is that she has seen brain scans. There's a major neuropsychiatrist by the name of Ruth Lanius, who does brain scans on a lot of people. And the children who are now adults that had childhood neglect, their brain matter isn't lighting up in the places where it's supposed to light up had they had that attunement. So it is so important. And many times when we're coming across a client who has a child or an adult that has an ADHD or an ADD kind of profile, what's happening is that it just could be that they did not get that mirroring that they needed to activate those mirror neurons. And so there's not a lot going on in their prefrontal cortex then, because that's where a lot of the mirror neurons are placed. And so it can look like ADHD, it can look like problems with executive functioning, it can look like something's up with their cognition. And so it goes really deep, and sometimes it's just hard to parse out what's what. So, and then these people end up going on to live difficult lives that are very traumatic, because having something like autism, ADHD, living in that kind of world is very overwhelming to the nervous system. Like I said, anything that's overwhelming to the nervous system could be considered a trauma. So she says if she sees an adult with the 3 Ps, which is procrastination, paralyzation, forgot what the 3rd P is. I'm going to have to give that to you. Procrastination, paralyzation, and one more. It's not coming to my mind right now. She knows that they've been through emotional neglect.
That sounds like fight, flight, or freeze.
Literally, yes.
Wow.
They're going into that direction. Yeah.
What would you say for treatment-wise? How would you treat somebody like that, whether it's a child, adolescent, adult?
So the first thing that I really try to do when they come in is I'm really trying to teach them somatic interventions to ground them, to literally get their feet on the ground, have them literally tether themselves to the ground, and I have them breathe in. It's like one of the first things I do, and just blow out and try to get that mess and that activation down, like into the floor.
Wow.
Just to say like, hi, you're here, orient yourself, you're in my
presence,
room.
Present.
Just to start with that, like, you're here, because people are often like a hot air balloon. They're often just like way up there in the sky. They have nothing to kind of pull them down.
Wow.
And the next thing that I try to teach, even before I go into any kind of like trauma interventions, is a tremendous amount of self-compassion. Because if we're not compassionate with ourselves, it's almost like a double whammy, because we have our original struggles that we're struggling with, like executive functioning or anxiety or whatever it is that we're struggling with.
Right.
And then we're being hard on ourselves. And when we're being really hard on ourselves, that causes you to get even more anxious or angrier or more irritable. So there's one other thing that I'm going to teach you in terms of trauma. There's a lot, which is we all have our window of tolerance that we want to survive in. It's supposed to be over here. Now what happens is that when someone gets triggered, and it could be any kind of trigger, it can be an internal trigger where a memory is coming up, a certain smell comes up, a certain voice comes up, a certain image comes up. So that can be
Even
internal.
a sound. Did you say sounds also?
And sounds,
Sound.
absolutely. The sounds are external. So actually, they can hear a song or something that reminds them of like when they were 4 and there was a song that used to play when their mom was in a horrible mood and they're suddenly feeling depressed and they have no idea why. So it's like that can be external and internal, but then like the external cues can also be like smells, sounds, someone screaming at you, whatever it is. Are so many external triggers around us. A bottle of water, if something happened, or a cup of water, if something happened and there was a cup of water here, anytime you see a cup of water, that can be a trigger. It's very difficult. Yeah. So what happens is we want to kind of go here in the window, want to stay here. But many times when we're triggered, we do 2 things. We either go out of the window of tolerance, we go up in emotional activation. And that's where we see the constant ruminating. We're trying to figure things out, the obsessing, but we're really not able to figure things out because the prefrontal cortex shut down in that moment because we're going into fight or flight. A way to flight is to ruminate and obsess over things.
Wow.
People think they're trying to solve problems, then you can't. Or the OCD that people have is a flight mechanism, really. They're panicking about things. They're not feeling safe. They're not in their window of tolerance. So, or OCD, actually, interestingly, and obsessing can be a flight away from pain that's lying deeper underneath, which is grief. It's like, if I can just figure this out,
Right.
and I don't have to sit with grief, you know. So that's what that. And then there's fight, where people are getting angry or they're getting irritable or loud, so anything that's kind of loud, running, activated, that's kind of outside. Your level of activation went up. Other people go down, which is like, that's the freeze. You're shut down. You are out of it, you're sleeping, you're hazy, you're in a fog, you're dissociated. Yeah. So that's the fight flight is kind of up there. The freeze is down here. And sometimes people can actually be doing both at the same time, where we're saying that like the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system are like, going at the same time, which is the sympathetic nervous system is what activates you. Parasympathetic is what is meant to calm you down. And they're both happening at the same time. So the person's frozen, but inside they're so activated.
And how does that look?
Do you know how that looks? That looks catatonic. Like this, deer in the headlights look.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see that in babies. You can see that in kids where they're like, but meanwhile, there's so much going on inside. And to the most further extreme, when we talk about people with schizophrenia, we call them catatonic. And we're like, they're not moving. They don't even know what's going on. Oh, they know what's going on. They are frozen, but inside there's so much activation. They're terrified.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
I
just threw a lot of information.
A lot of information. Yeah. Actually, I was thinking, I want to throw something out there that I wasn't going to, but it's more of a controversial topic. But it relates really to this field of trauma and a lot what's going on in Israel, what's going on in other people's lives. How do you feel about... Now, I have zero knowledge about it personally. That's why I'm asking. I don't really know where I stand yet. I'm like, maybe it works for some. But how do you feel, or what do you know about psychedelics and how that plays a role in therapy? Perhaps that's something that you've ever seen or have experience with?
Yeah, so people are really talking about psychedelics a lot. I personally am not drawn to it simply because I don't have enough experience with it. So I'm going to talk from a very inexperienced lens about it. I'm thinking about how strong somebody's nervous system is and people's temperament and people's genetic load. From what I understand, and also when we talk about psychedelics, we're talking about a whole bunch of different things. So just from the little bit that I know, there's ketamine-assisted therapy.
That's right.
There's psilocybin, there's mushrooms, or I
think-
think psilocybin is a mushroom,
Yeah.
is a kind of mushroom.
Which I think variations of it is approved in different states.
Yes, yes. And I think that there's, and then like towards the other end, there's like, I forgot what it's called, but like it's like toad venom, and then the one that everyone knows about, which is like ayahuasca.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll give you this. From the little bit of personal and professional knowledge that I do have and experiences that I've heard about, spoken about with colleagues, read about, and seen, I think people with stronger nervous systems who can like handle things that come at a faster wave
Yeah.
towards their nervous system, I think they can do actually really well with like the toad venom stuff and like the ayahuasca, which is pretty harsh on the body. And some of them have had unbelievable breakthroughs.
Wow.
Where they've kind of made connections, or they've seen certain things on their trips that were really eye-opening. And then afterwards, this is so important, this part, they went back to their therapists and worked on it and
Wow.
integrated it. Without integration, if you're just going on these trips
Yeah.
without integration, I don't think it's worth much.
Wow. You need to do the work.
Yeah, you must do the work. People think it's like a silver bullet. Therapy is just not a silver bullet. There are a lot of modalities that I think are more effective than others.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like, so this is just, you're just getting my, I guess, my little dot of an opinion over here. I would say if you have any kind of genetic load in your family of like bipolar, schizophrenia, and if you're just a highly sensitive person,
Yeah.
I think someone should stay away from that.
Absolutely.
But again, I don't have enough experience with it, and someone else may come at me and say,
Right.
so I don't.
So somebody that has experience with it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that somebody who's doing this, or a client, would need somebody to be guiding them along. You can't just.
And that's the issue with that.
Exactly.
Also, there are some shamans, let's say, who are doing ayahuasca that I think are really in the know, and some maybe that are not.
Right.
Ketamine assisted therapy, I think, seems to me to be a bit more regulated, and so people have really gone to wonderful places with that. And then I've heard of someone again who tried it and it
Didn't work.
didn't take them to where they wanted to go.
Okay.
It was very disappointing. I'm not sure again if it was
Right.
the person who administrated it, or
Yeah.
or if the therapy that was done while they were under ketamine, if it was effective. I'm not sure. So again, I'm coming just from my own little opinion. So I am working with so many sensitive nervous systems that I don't tell my clients what to do, but if they were to, I would really research it very well with them to see what kind of psychedelic route would be safest and most effective. So I'm not close to it. I've heard really wonderful things, but I think we kind of, in Yiddish, we say like we have to know via and vios.
Right.
Like, which way is the correct way specifically for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
So going back to trauma and what it actually looks like, do you feel you've worked through with clients of different stages of trauma, and what has worked in your experience when you're dealing with different stages with the children or the adults or the moms? What do you feel has made a tremendous breakthrough?
Yeah. In terms of breakthroughs, I want you to know it comes slowly. And what could sometimes feel like a breakthrough can feel really horrible for a client. So if one client has been not accepting certain things, and I've kind of worked on making them more present to their life because they kept on dissociating, and we worked on a lot of grounding techniques, which is kind of like even before you're even talking about their trauma, but now they're more in their body. They're like, thank you very much. I don't appreciate this.
Wow.
And I'm like, but this is a breakthrough, and they're like, but I'm in pain now, or I'm making more grounded decisions, but this is really hard. And now we have to get through the work. And then, so it's about first like stabilizing the client from wherever they were, if they were too dissociated, or if they're ruminating too much, or if they're highly anxious, or it's targeting those things first. With each client, it's different, but it's with grounding, it's with creating safety, it's my use of self. My relationship with them is first and foremost. With any modality that I use, my relationship with them is what I would say the biggest key to their healing, because most of the clients that I'm dealing with have relational wounds, and relational hurts heal in relationships. So that's really my biggest, I would say, tool that I use in addition to anything else. And then once I kind of have them here and I feel that it's safe to start the work, I can start with more somatic practices. So I use sensory motor psychotherapy, where we're kind of thinking about a memory or something like that, and we really track how it feels in the body, and we can go back to really interesting times that they don't even think was so significant, but for some reason had an impact on their nervous system. And they're able to release it either through kind of grieving it in session with me, and I'm kind of with them relationally and witnessing it, and they're able to grieve it. Or literally they can like kind of like, it's called like sequencing, they can kind of shake, and it kind of comes out of their body.
Wow. That's deep somatic work.
Yes.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Yes. Or we can do EMDR, which really helps them with their core beliefs about themselves. And it can help take the charge out of certain memories where they're remembering it, but it doesn't hit them with such a force. And then the parts work that we do is going through the different parts of them that are trying to protect them, but at the same time, those protectors might be giving them some trouble. So it's really going through that part's life story and perhaps releasing what they've been through. And you spoke about maybe inheriting trauma.
Yeah.
They can be holding on to pain that might not be theirs. And it's interesting, but the parts themselves come to it, or they'll say things like, I'm feeling my father's sadness almost from like when he was little or something. Or like, I'm feeling my mother's rage or something, but it doesn't feel like mine. Right. The parts kind of, the body's built to heal.
Yeah.
The parts come up with it. We just kind of facilitate it, but the nervous system will bring you that material as time goes on. We don't push it.
Do you feel like someone can heal without recalling or fully remembering their memory or of trauma? Yeah.
Yes, I'm actually looking into getting trained, and it's a fairly new modality called deep brain reorienting, where it was created by a man called Frank Corrigan, and he's in the neurofeedback world. And he realized that a lot of the trauma that clients go through is deep in the brainstem. And now EMDR, specifically IFS, even somatic work, which is wonderful work, and what I'm doing now is more in like the upper parts, more in like the cortex or the prefrontal cortex. That's like what we're targeting. This is more at a brainstem level before so you recall something that's just bothering you. You can bring it into session. And then he has you bring up what he calls orienting tension. which the orienting tension, if you think about it, if you're orienting to something, it's affecting your eyes and your forehead and the back of the neck.
Wow. Yeah.
What are you orienting to? You're orienting to a shock of some sort. You're orienting to something. And that is happening. He wants to start it. He wants to start processing that trauma from there before it even had the chance to go to the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain. Many times I'm processing trauma from the amygdala already, which is like, that's like the broken smoke detector that keeps on going off. You know, he wants to get it from before. And he's seen tremendous success with that. And it could be done in tandem with, again, parts work. It can be integrated. But I've seen really amazing results, and we don't need to recall graphic information. And with sensory motor, somatic experiencing, even parts work, whatever it is, my main goal is not the graphic details. It's more about how did it affect this person's nervous system. So it's gentle, it's discreet, it's at this person's will. And another thing with trauma, you know, people want to heal very fast, but you need to be so careful with someone's nervous system. I need them to be whole when they're walking out and during the week. So I work very slow and very, with a lot of caution. And there's this saying in trauma, slower is faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
So I don't promise any quick fixes. If you're coming to me, you probably had, I deal a lot with, like, if I'm dealing with parenting and I'm dealing with chronic illness and things like that, I'm dealing with things that have built up for a very long time. I don't promise any kind of results, honestly. I'm promising a journey, and it's going to be with me for a while, and I'm very upfront with that. Like, I'm not one of these quick fixes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I think that's very
My
important.
goal is I want to know if in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, are you recalling a time a few months ago, 6 months ago, where something came up and you're saying, hey, you know, I think I handled this differently than I would have handled this previously.
Wow.
Those are my breakthroughs.
Wow.
They're very quiet, though.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. You know, I don't know if we discussed this last time. We might have touched on this. How do you, again, I struggle with this at times in therapy. When I used to lead groups or when I did one-on-one work. You know, how do you not take all that trauma on yourself? It's just, you know, the quality of your life, I believe, I'm a strong believer that the quality of your life is the quality of your relationships, and you're building those relationships with your clients. And you know, you build trust, you know, you build that safe area where they can trust you and you trust them. I find a lot of times I would open up to my clients that when they're vulnerable to me, I'm vulnerable to them, and I find we're able to connect deeply that way. But a lot of times, a lot of that trauma they went through, like I know personal friends even that open up to me, I take it in, and it's just, it's like I'm going through that trauma. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, this was such a good question. I think that you even touched upon in the previous episode. And that's where the energetic boundaries come in.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, I think that literally starts with our attachment in a way. Okay. So some of us that have like a little bit of like that porous kind of nervous system that's more sensitive.
Yes.
And was also very sensitive to our mother's nervous systems.
Wow.
Will tend to take on the mother's problems, or we first start off with the mother, and we do this from age 0. Again, this is not to shame mothers, just they can't help it that their babies do this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we have to, you know, so we kind of get, it can kind of lead to a little bit of like that codependent kind of thing, and we just feel energy very, very strongly.
Yes, yeah.
So what I suggest is a lot of times your own trauma work will really help you out with that, to kind of build to strengthen your nervous system. But while you're sitting with people, what I do is I started to realize, like, you know what? First of all, I take a breath. I put my hand on my heart, and I put my hand on my stomach sometimes, which is like to kind of like to calm myself down on this side. It's like warm, it's soothing. But then on the outside, I'm like, okay, here's my shield. And here's where I start and end, and this is where they start and end.
Okay.
And I have enough respect and belief in my clients and in people around me that they can hold their own. And I'm not that important in a way that I have to take on, even though, again, sometimes I have to work on this somatically, even within myself, so it's not just telling this to myself, but I literally have to kind of like breathe in compassion for myself, and then but it's yours, but I'll breathe out compassion for you as well, and it's kind of creating a little bit of that separation. Another thing that's also, I think, so important when I'm with people, when I'm with clients, and when I'm not with clients, it's play. Ruth Cohn talks about this. We don't play enough.
Yeah.
And play is super important. So developing your interest, if you like to paint, if you like to crochet, if you like to dance, if you like to sing, if you like to play basketball, including those things in your life, it's not a luxury. It's really something that you must do. Going out with good friends, good people who energize you, don't drain you. And knowing that you should do that, you have a right to do that, even though somebody else is suffering, so that you can fill yourself up so that you could be there for them in a healthy manner, in a healthy way.
Beautiful. Yeah. And, it's funny, this past Shabbos, I was visiting a family, and we were discussing, we were in a conversation where one of the brothers of the family members was there without his wife, and we just asked, like, where's your wife? And he said, my wife is on a 10-day retreat where she was doing a deep meditation, like where there's no talking, there is, it's like, you're eating very healthy food, all vegetarian, you're drinking water, you're just detoxing. And somebody said, she's the woman there saying, basically her opinion was, it's great for someone who's healthy, but someone who has had some traumas and difficulties can really be the opposite effect. Have you seen that? What are your thoughts on that?
It's so interesting. I haven't seen it, but I'm just picturing it, and I'm imagining it. And this is why I'm so happy that you're doing these episodes, because I really want people to be educated. I think it goes back to how someone's wired. Look at this wire. This is a good, strong wire. It has like the coating on it. This can go for a 10-day retreat.
Well
then
said.
there are the thinner wires that are just as important and do amazing things, but this one shouldn't go at a retreat.
Yeah.
And then there are those wires that don't have any coating.
Wow.
That's what works in here, and so again, slower is faster. I want them to start building their own coatings, their own wiring, their own connections. So it really depends who you are. And the problem is that people with weaker nervous systems are in such pain, and they want to kind of, I don't like calling it weaker, exquisite nervous systems, highly sensitive.
Sensitive, yeah.
Highly sensitive, because they're such beautiful nervous systems in terms of a lot of them are just tuned into art in the way that, or the world, or details, or feelings, or, some of the clients that I have are unbelievably talented. They all are in their own way. We have to know who we are and what would be built for us. Like some of us can go for ayahuasca, can go for those 10-day retreats.
Okay.
And some of us would come back. Because think about it again. The root of trauma is that you're alone. Going on a
Right.
10-day retreat, alone, not talking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I'm not super comfortable with it. And what I always tell people also is something's niggling at you. That's why I like to work somatically also. So many times people come back to me and say, I started getting that feeling in that gut like that you were talking about, and I listened to it and I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, you know? So if something not sitting well with you.
If someone's watching this right now
Yeah.
and they're saying, they feel like they've gone too far and just have had no success with dealing with their emotional world, whether there's different stressors in life and traumas that they've gone through as children, as adults, and it's like they feel like, again, they've gone too far. What would you tell them? Is there, they feel they're too broken? How would you advise them?
Most of the time when someone went too far, it means that some sort of intervention was done that wasn't meant for their nervous system. That's basically what it means. So something, and I'm not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There are amazing interventions, but you have to research who is the person that's implementing that intervention. Are they regulated? Are they owning up to somebody? Do they have credentials?
Wow. Yeah.
We have to be so careful. Who is implementing this? What do you know yourself? What kind of person are you? What can you actually handle? There's Google now, there's ChatGPT.
Yes.
Like, put your profile in there, you'll get information, in terms of what you need. So if someone went too far, something went amok there. Their relationship with their therapist isn't good. Something's up. If a client's not doing well in therapy, it's up to me as the clinician to say, am I doing everything I need to do for this client? Why am I stuck? I need to go back to supervision. I need to research. Maybe my personality is not meant for them. Maybe I'm triggering them.
Wow.
Maybe I think that they can use a different modality that I don't practice, but somebody else who's wonderful can practice. And
that's amazing.
We have to have...
You have to have that honest conversation with yourself.
With yourself.
Just be true to yourself.
We're not it. Like, we're not the best at everything.
Right.
And so patiently, move them forward, gently move them forward in the correct direction that they have to go. And then in and of itself can be hard for a client because they're like, what do you mean you don't want to work with me anymore? And I'm like, I would be happy to work with you forever. I just want you to be okay.
Wow.
So
good. That's very good.
If you're feeling like you're too broken, there's something in the relationship, in the therapy that you're doing, something that's telling you you're too broken, and then it's time for someone else or something else.
Wow.
No one's ever too broken. Also, what are we calling broken?
Right. You have to define that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And you mentioned some ways you stay grounded through breathing and through, orienting yourself and holding your own space.
Yeah.
I guess that's one way not to take in somebody else's pain. And if there's anything else you can share regarding that, for the clients themselves that are very sensitive, and how would they go about, the world around them?
Yes.
Is there anything you can recommend for them?
Yes. I don't take anything for granted. I really want to know what their sensory integration profile is like. I want to know what their cognition is like. I want to know what their health is like. I want to know what their family is like. I want to know what their history is like. I really get very detailed about these things. And as much as I can, in addition to the deep work that I'm doing, it's almost like also like, don't take yourself so seriously. Like some really simple things can go a very long way. And it's like, keep it simple, stupid type of thing, like Judge Judy, you know what I mean? So if there are certain friends who are constantly putting you down, let's think about that for a minute. If there's something that is not great with your health, what's happening there that we can kind of move this along?
Right.
Sensory integration. If you're sensitive to certain sounds, certain lighting, whatever the case is, before you go to a wedding, let's have a plan, right? Because that's like, you know, social anxiety stimulation, that's sensory stimulation. There's so much going on. Let's plan for that.
Wow.
Are you going to have breaks? What's the lighting like? Do you need to go out? Do you need to maybe wear like little earbuds that nobody sees? Like, let's make your life more comfortable. Do you need some little fidgets in your pockets that nobody sees? Do you need your water? What do you need to make your life more comfortable? In addition, I like to teach clients skills specifically for them that they need. I want them walking out with like, they always laugh. They get these texts from me after sessions of like, these are the list of things for you that might be helpful for you this week. And it's nice because it's like a transitional object of my care to them throughout the week. And it's like, oh, I can turn to these things of like, what can keep me regulated? So I like them to have like a list of like 10 skills on their fridge, on their mirror, on their, wherever they go, on your phone, of things that will help keep you regulated. And usually those things are like, include the 5 senses. So like, is there a gum that works for you? Is there water that works for you? Is there a certain smell, like a lotion that you have with you? Is there some fuzzy thing you have with you? Like, keeping their environment, being mindful about their internal and external environment when they're not in session with me matters a lot to me, if that makes sense. And that's not, rocket science, but it goes a long way. Are there different pictures on your phone? Like, I know for myself, like, I love scrolling through sometimes like different like seasons and the foliage, right? Or so I have a lot of pictures of that. I make sure to, like, in the fall, I take a lot of pictures because that's like what's resourcing to me. I like pictures of my nieces and nephews, so I'll like make sure to have like constant updates on that. And I ask people, what is it that creates some happiness, some play, some calm, some rest, some good taste, some good smells? Always building that, it doesn't need to be expensive. That's the self-care I try to constantly teach them. And what it teaches them and what it models for them is, so many of them are missing that experience of someone having nurtured them and taken care of them. And it's a way that I try to extend my nurturing to them. Is I know boundary-wise I can't take care of them in the way they would have wanted a mother to. But I try to model that for them so that they can take that in and then start taking care of themselves with the different things that we kind of put together here in session. So it's an extension of my care towards them as a transitional object that I feel, maybe you can hold that with you. And also like taking care of yourself, which a lot of people find invalidating. They're like, I took care of myself my whole life. And I'm like, I know.
Wow.
I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah.
This is an extension of my care.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much
My pleasure.
for going deep and really giving tremendous advice and tips, and also sharing different things about your therapy sessions, your clients, and how you take care of them and hold them.
Yeah, they're my biggest teachers, really. They drive
resilient
everything. They're really resilient.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chaya.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this, because I feel that if there's even one person who can be saved from a negative therapy experience or intervention or no experience at all, the more we educate, the more we can
Absolutely.
help people.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that you're doing this. And if we can help even one person,
Absolutely.
we did our job.
I appreciate you coming
Yeah.
on a second time and
Yeah,
doing this.
my pleasure.
Really profound. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure for me.
Thank you.
Tremendous learning experience for me, and
Same here.
it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.